Osamu Dazai, I apologize. Okay, I apologize for ripping on you on the last video. I was not aware of the circumstances that were to come, and I will take full accountability for dogging on you when you had a life that was. I mean, apparently this is like an autobiography kind of, and so like it's a semi autobiographical, whatever the fuck, and so yeah. I'm sorry for ripping on you, because the second half of this story is kind of fucked. Okay, it's kind of fucked, and when I was reading it and when I finished it, I was like, yo, I feel kind of bad for ripping on this guy. Okay, like that's my fault. That's my fault. Okay, and I'll take full accountability for that, because I did some research after I finished the book just to make sure I had like a general like comprehension of like what's going on in the story just before I come on here and spew some more stupid shit. But I will continue to clown on this man, and it's not because I think that he's clown. You know, well, he is a clown because I learned his name is Yozo, the main character. I learned that Yozo, he is a clown in many many ways, and by the end of the story, he's not much so a clown. He's just a man. Okay, but okay, and so let me just correct some things before we get into my evaluation or like my commentary on the later chapters of the story. So basically, in the beginning, right? I think I brought up something about what the fuck was it? Okay, I think I brought up something about how he was like talking very vaguely about what happened to him when he was a kid, and it was in reference to what like the servants did to him. And at the time, I guess I wasn't like reading like too like much into it because I was just reading it subsurfacely, not whatever. But anyways, I went back and I did some revisions of my notes just because you know like sometimes you just got to check yourself, and this was one of the instances. And the more I read into it, the more I kind of realized that, and this is a trigger warning for anyone that like deals is like sensitive to essay or like childhood essay or something like that, not something like that, like in those like type of realms. And so just be warned that I will be talking about that because another instance later happens in the story, and it is there's like two like interpretations of what happened in that one scene, but I'm gonna choose the more popular version just because I don't want to undermine what she went through. And so there will be discussions of like I don't want to. I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna like. What's it called? I'm not gonna. Oh, fuck. What's the word? I'm not gonna censor myself. There's gonna be some mention of, with like rape with his like wife later on in the story, and so I just want to get that out of the way. So if you guys are sensitive to that type of content, just leave this video because it's dark and dreary from here because this man just does not know when to stop, basically, and so that is where um yeah, that is where I will leave that topic. But anyways, we go into the. So I'm gonna correct myself and said I was like, oh, like what the fuck was he talking about? Like, because I called him dramatic as fuck when he said, um, I now think that to perpetrate such a thing on a small child is the ugliest, vilest, cruelest crime a human being can commit. And I initially said that was dramatic as fuck, but then the more I read into it, and then you know, as I did my research, I realized that he might be referring to some sexual assault that he experienced as a child under the hands of the servants at his house, and he was like too ashamed to like tell his parents about it because he was a meek and really insecure child who wasn't really sure how to even interact with anybody, much less his parents. And with a heavy topic like that, of course he would not be able to go to his parents and talk about it. And then as an adult, when he's writing this, he's like reflecting on it, and he was talking about how um like he just wasn't able to just talk about it, you know. And then later on he like kind of like talks about like this event happening to him as like one of the reasons why he has such difficulty like dealing with like women, because he says something at the end saying that um he said that women found in me a man who could keep a love secret. And I think that that comes from him like being assaulted, and then so he thinks that I don't know if I'm like reading into this like properly, right? But like I think that in his mind, because I hear that like a lot of people that experience sexual assault as children, they kind of get stunted, and so this like stagnation almost causes him to just kind of stay where he was. And so in his like I'm not calling it childish, but I think that in his like kind of more kind of just like insular mind of like where it's a lot more like just like he's very stagnant. Okay, basically in his mind he's just kind of like, oh, like the reason why these women like flock to me is because I'm like this weak man who will not tell people like what happened to me. And so I think that's what he means by that, but I could be wrong. You could correct me about that. But then I wrote some notes, so like I used different colored pen just to make sure that like you guys know that I'm revising my notes as we go. But so I basically write, I feel like this was the only time he wasn't at fault, because in the rest of the story he kind of shifts blame on like onto other people, where I think that like he definitely could take accountability for it, but like in this instance, like at the very very beginning of the book, like none of this was his fault, because one, he's a child, two, he's a child, and three, he's a child, and these adults should know better. And I think a lot of it comes from him just having a bad upbringing where there were just too many kids to go around, and having an absent father, and like his mother is like just never really talked about either. And so yeah, I feel like all of this right here is none of his fault, but like I guess I was taking it lightly because it's the beginning of the story and stuff. And so that is why I will apologize to you, Yozo or Mr. Dazai, for if you went through this type of experience as a child. Like, I was not meaning to rip on you. That's my ignorance, and I'll take accountability for that. But I think that's all the corrections I have to make in terms of that. But now we're gonna go into the third notebook, and this is where everything just goes to shit. So the last time we checked on him was that when he killed himself, basically him and that woman walked into the water, and he was the one who made it out alive. And yeah, yeah, that's basically where we left off. And so um his I guess it's like his like former, I don't know who this man is, like his relationship to the main character is, but like, so we're gonna call this guy Flatfish, because this is what the main character calls him. And so Flatfish is this guy, this older gentleman that like takes Yozo, the main character, in after he's like tried to kill himself basically. And so he offers him a room up in his crib or whatever the fuck. And then so yeah, so after he tried to kill himself, he just basically holds himself up in like this room where he like just lives for free, and he just mopes and groans, and he like talks about how he can't drink, and he's just so weak that he can't even like think about killing himself. That's where he is at, right? Like, he's just at such a like a low place where he's like, bro, like, what's the point of killing myself if like I'm at this level? I don't know. So like basically that's where he's at. um and he goes into this like whole thing about how um there's like this man that lives with Flatfish and him. He's like a 17-year-old boy apparently, and he's kind of called like the, what's it called, like the like the shopkeeper. So whenever Flatfish would go out to like do other business, like this shopkeeper would come. And then so basically this main character is talking about how like this boy is apparently the illegitimate son of like Flatfish, but like he's like, oh, but like I wouldn't know anything about that, like just the rumors. But like the boy kind of has like fishy eyes, and so I don't know what the fuck that was about. But I think that was like to like go into like this whole thing about like how the father and son, like Flatfish and that boy, have like a weird relationship where like they eat like dinner like silently. And I think that might remind the main character of like his upbringing, because if I didn't mention this before, like he like grew up in a big family, and whenever they would have dinner, like it was super quiet and everybody just never spoke while they ate. And I can't imagine oh hell worse than that. Just like eating and just in silence. Like, you guys can't even have a little bit of YouTube. Like, you can't put on the radio, like nothing like that. Like, or like talk about how your day is going. Like, I feel like that's just something you should do, because I don't want to listen to you guys chew. But anyways, so basically the boy like just like brings him like the main character food all the time, because what else is the main character going to do for himself? Well, anyways, so so Flatfish, he like comes into like a decent amount of money, and so he sits down the main character after like a while passed. Like, I think either a few months or a few weeks have passed since he tried to commit suicide. And so he sits the guy down and was like, okay, bro, like, what do you plan to do after this? Like, after you try killing yourself, like, what are you going to do after this? Because I let you chill for a little bit, and now it's like, the fuck you going to do with your life? And so the guy, the main character, he was like, he didn't answer because he didn't know. Because, like, we all know at this point, this man is a spineless motherfucker, and he doesn't know what he wants for himself. All he knows is that he wants to drink and have sex. That's all he knows at this point. And so he just stays quiet while he's eating. And so the Flatfish guy, I low-key actually really like this flat. Like, it's like stated that he's kind of like an unscrupulous guy, where he kind of like works like in illegal things. But like, I think at heart this guy is a really good guy. I think Flatfish is like one of the more better characters in this story because I don't really think there's like any good characters, but I think this character I think has this main character's best interest at heart, which I think is kind of nice. Like there were moments when in this conversation where I was like, wow, this guy is actually like super fucking nice. Um, and the fact that he doesn't even get a name is kind of crazy, and I have to call him Flatfish. But he is a very kind of like understanding guy in that he's like, okay, like I want to help you, but like you have to tell me what the fuck is going on in that head of yours for me to help you. And then this main character being the fucking meek dude that he is, he's like, I don't know what the fuck is going on in my head. I'm like up in the air. And then he eventually admits that he wants to be an artist, and the guy like laughs in his fucking face, which is not nice, but at the same time, like I think the way that maybe Yozo like delivered it wasn't as like uh wasn't as serious as Flatfish was anticipating. But basically, the one thing that like Flatfish said that like really kind of made me feel like, oh, like this guy's actually like cares about the main character. He said this right, word for word. He says, "I'm really worried about you. I'm responsible for you now, and I don't like you to have such a heart, and I don't like you to have such half-hearted feelings. I wish you would show me that you're resolved to make an effort, a real effort to turn over a new leaf. If, for example, you were to come to me, oh shit, my ear just like went fucking shot out. Oh shit. If, for example, you were to come to me to discuss seriously your plans for the future, I would certainly do what I could. But of course, you can't help expect to lead your former life of luxury on the help of that poor old Flatfish can give. Don't give yourself any illusions on that score. No, but if you are resolute in your determination to begin afresh and make definite plans for building your future, I think that I might actually be willing to help you rehabilitate yourself. Um, if you came for me for help. Though, heaven knows, I haven't much to spare. Do you understand my feelings? What are your plans? And I think that's like actually a really, really nice sentiment. I think that's like one of the first times someone has actually, or like where I actually was like, oh wow, like this person actually has the main character's like best interest at heart. Because, actually, I think that Taki kid actually had like, actually was wanting to be friends with Yozo, but Yozo was like, obviously like a really like stupid kid, right? He was a stupid kid that didn't understand that um, like not everyone is out there to get you anyways. But so yeah, I thought that was really nice of him, and I even wrote I was like, oh, this guy's so nice, what the fuck. And I don't think my sentiments changed much throughout the story. Like he has some moments where I'm like, that's kind of weird, but like at the end of the day, most of the characters in the story are really morally questionable, so I don't really like, yeah, whatever. So basically that they had that conversation, and then that's when oh, and then this main character goes into this whole spiel about if the Flatfish had been more forthright about what he meant, but like, oh, what do you plan on doing on your future? Like, because he was like blaming him, like saying, oh, like if you were just it, because like he was saying like, oh, if Flatfish had said like, oh, if you were just to go to school, your parents would pay for this and that, then my life wouldn't have been so shit. But since he decided to be vague, like every single fucking human being is, then my life, because and my life just went to shit because I didn't know like the full story. And you know what? I can't agree with that, but at the same time, like I feel like at this point in your life you have some agency and you can read between the lines, but maybe he just needs someone to spell it out for him. But like I feel like in this instance he was really shifting the blame, and I was just like, bro, I am not feeling you right now, okay? He said but as a result of his unnecessary precautions, or rather the incomprehensible vanity and love of appearances of the people of the world, I was subjected to the most dismal set of experiences. Like, is that not dramatic? I said the way he blamed everyone instead of himself. Like, he literally could have just been like, oh, like, I want to go back to school for art. And then the guy would have just been like, oh, like, I guess your parents can, like, support you in that endeavor. Um, yeah, so he said, but thanks to his intolerably prudent oh my god, I can't say that manner of speech, I only felt irritable, and this caused the whole course of my life to be altered. And like I said, this just seems to me that like he is just passing the blame until like he just wants like someone to blame for his shitty life, because at this point he's an adult and he's like at least like know what he wants to do. And I get that being depressed and blah 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 this and that, but I'm like, you just at some point in your life, you just have to take some like accountability, some responsibility, some agency in your life, and just be like, this is what I want to do, and like stop blaming everybody for like the wrongdoings in your life, because at some point it's like it's your life, bro. Like you can't just like let everybody guide you where you want to go. But the man's dead now, so I can't really say that to his fucking face. But that's what I'm taking away from this text, if you will, right? Um, and then so he's like, oh, like so like basically the main character's like, oh, so you think I should get a job? And then the fucking fish guy, he's like, well, don't fucking ask me. Like, don't ask me what I should tell. Like, don't ask me what you should do. Like, you should know what you want to fucking do. And then he's like, and this is where he like starts to, I think I like backtrack somehow. Yeah, and then he's like, I want to be a painter, and he said this with conviction allegedly, and then the guy starts laughing in his face. And so yeah. And then so after that conversation, he was embarrassed. Okay, he was embarrassed by that laughter, like being laughed at, like when he like told his true intentions. And so he ran away from home. And I was like, bruh. I was like, bruh, you serious? Like you fucking ran away from home because you don't know what you're doing with your life? Like you could just stay there, like figure out your feelings, but like the fuck do I know, right? I guess I'm rational. But so anyways, he like writes a note and it was like, hey yo bro, like I'm going for a walk, I'll be back, I'm going to my homie's house, and yeah, just trust me on this. And he's like, please do not worry about me, I'm telling the truth. And I just wrote cap, because everything that comes out of this man's mouth, I just can't trust. I just can't trust for some unknown godforsaken reason, right? So anyways, so he runs away from home, and he like goes on this thing about like, oh, I didn't run away from home because of this and that, but like he just ran away from home anyways. So he wanders the streets for a little bit, and then he realizes that where the fuck are we? Oh, and then he realizes that he like doesn't have anywhere to fucking go, so he ended up like actually going to his friend's house. Like he had no plans of actually going there initially, but then he like, the more he walked around, he was like, damn, like what the fuck am I gonna do? And he's like, well, I have no friends, I have nowhere to go, so like I guess I can go to the last person I was actually like friends with. And so he ends up at Horiki, is that how you say his name? I'm gonna call him Hori because like you guys remember my whole spiel about that. And so he ends up visiting him, and yeah, so basically he opens up the door and he was like, you, what a surprise. You've been forgiven by your father, haven't you? Not yet. Because at this point he knows about him like trying to kill himself or whatever. So anyways, so he walks in, and then he walks in, and then the guy is like a hoary guy. He's like, bro, actually fuck that. Like I got somewhere to be. I got business to attend to. And he's like, what kind of business? But before he can get into like what business it is, he like starts chastising him, the main character, for like pulling at his like couch cushions, like the threads and stuff. And it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, cause like the main character's like pulling the threads at his couch and stuff. Like, what the fuck are you doing? And the main character goes into his thing about like, oh, like this guy is like so like gung ho about his like possessions, like he's like jealous that I'm like touching it. But like, no, bro, you're like ripping the threads out of his couch, and it's evident that this guy's poor. So what the fuck are you? So I was like, I wasn't having it. I was like, bro, like, I was like, maybe you shouldn't be messing with other people's belongings. But like, who am I to say, right? Who am I to say? I feel like that's just like a thing where like he's just a rich kid, or maybe I don't know. But he's poor. He's been poor before, so like I don't know. Anyways, before he can get into like what business he had, his mom, the main character, not the main character, the hoary guy's mom, like brought some jelly in, and they had some of that, and then like the hoary guy's being super nice to his mom, which I thought was, I don't know if it was genuine, but I guess that was nice of him to be like nice to his mom. Yeah, the bar is in hell, if you can tell. This hoary guy, initially I just thought he was some like douchebag, that had like some semblance of like humanity in him, but like after what happened later in the story, I was like, maybe it's good you got out of his life, but what do I know? But anyways, so as they're eating the jelly, this woman comes in, and uh yeah, and this woman comes in and asking Hori for like all of this not information, asking him for like a file. And then so they were talking, and then it comes out that she's like an editor for a newspaper, and Hori was like making illustrations for them, and he was like handing over his illustrations. And then so when she was there, like a telegram came through, and then the messenger gave it to him, and then Hori gave it a read, and he was like, bro, like what the fuck, you ran away from home? He said, you go back home, you go back at once. I ought to take you there myself, I suppose, but I haven't gotten the time now. Imagine a runaway and looking so smug. And all I had to say to that was, LOL. And then so the woman was like, you know what? I'll take you home. And this is where I was just like, bruh. I was like, bruh, are you fucking serious? Like, there is no way in hell. And so basically, right, she walks him home, whatever the fuck. And then she like goes into so the background of her, it was that like she has a 5-year-old girl and that her husband died 3 years before and this and that, right? And then she says, I don't know who says this. I don't know who says it, but I'll read it out loud. Okay, so it says, "You look like someone who's had an unhappy childhood. You're so sensitive. More's the pity for you." And then the very next page, this man said, I led for the first time the life of a kept man." And when I read that, I was like, are you fucking serious? He managed to rope another woman into his miserable life and making her life miserable. I was, when I tell you I was gooped, I was gooped. I was like, I cannot believe your ass managed to fucking con another woman into your miserable fucking life, you fucking worm of a man. But that's either here or there. Okay, because we're getting into it now. So basically, the woman, right, she like goes to work or whatever, and then he stays home and like watches the girl, her girl, and then he starts asking for money. After, a week after he starts like living with her, he starts asking for money. He's like, I want some money. And she's like, how much? And he's like, a lot. And he goes into this thing, right? He's like, love flies out the window when poverty comes in the door. And then the woman was like, don't be silly. Such a trite expression. And he said, is it? But you don't understand. I may run away if things go on at this rate. And then she said, which one of us is the poor one? And which one will run away? What a silly thing to say. And I was just like, girl. Like, a lot of this is just me being like, LOL, okay? Because like, sometimes you just gotta be like, what the fuck? And then he went on to go, and then he said, I want to buy my drinks and cigarettes with my own money. I'm a lot better artist than Hori. And then he like goes into this thing about like how he wishes people can like see his ghost pictures, the paintings that he did when he was like a teenager, because he was like apparently like a way better artist when back then than he is now. And like he knew that like if he were to like show those pictures to like people, that it would like legitimize him in the eyes of like those people. But like I don't really know if it would. I'll be honest with you, I feel like he just like is saying that because he just doesn't have much to him at this point, and he just like is reminiscing on the past and thinking that it was better than it was. So I don't know if that's the genuine truth. But the thing that you have to really know about this writer is that he over exaggerates, and he is definitely like an unreliable narrator as you like read on. And so a lot of the things that I read, I'm kind of like the fog, and I think that's definitely intentional, or maybe not, I don't know, but like for me, I'm just kind of like the fog. And so yeah. So anyways, yeah, so she believes him. She's like, okay, you know what, like if you're really better than this Hori guy, then you know what, I'll give you a chance, because like you're telling me what you want to do, and I want to help you out because you seem like a good man. Hoodwinked. And you know why she thinks that? She even says it herself. She says, most women have only to lay eyes on you to want to be doing something for you so badly that they cannot stand it. You're always so timid, and yet you're funny. Women love a funny man. Take it from her herself, okay? And then so she says, sometimes you get terribly lonely and depressed, but that only makes a woman heart itch all the more for you. So what I took from that, right? What I took from that was that she was like, oh, you are so pathetic and worthless that I want to help you so bad. Because sometimes there are women out in the world, right? And these women, they're what you would call a mechanic. They love to fix. They love to mend. They love to like source out a problem and fix it. And in these women, and the cars that these women work on are considered men, right? The men that they work on, I fear that they are cars that are meant to be sent to the pound. Not the pound, like wherever like dumped and like decrepit cars go, I feel like that's where these men should go, because these men are not worth your time. But like I guess 1930s Japan was something different. Okay, it was like post-war, and so they were like going through the shits of it. But like I feel like after war, I would not busy myself with a man. But what do I know when I have a kid, right? But what do I know? What do I know? So, anyways, I took that from, I interpreted it as like, oh, you are a pathetic man, and as me, as like a strong woman who has like all of my life together, or like my life together, I want to help you out because I have such a big heart, and I respect her for that because I genuinely do think that she is like a good woman, and I don't really know what would make her a bad woman in this regard because she's like literally like sticking her neck out to help this guy when she has a kid. Maybe that's a thing. Maybe that's like what makes her bad person is that like she has a kid and she's like focusing on this guy instead of her kid. But I don't know. Okay, I don't know. I don't have kids, so I can't really pass judgment on that. And then so yeah, basically he starts working for the news people, and then he starts making a decent living off of his cartoons and stuff, and that's pretty great, right? That's pretty great. And then so oh and then so the woman actually, this is pretty nice of her. She's like at her suggestion, a conference would happen where Flatfish, the Horiki guy, whatever, and would like talk and whatever about like him, just in case he like do something funky. And so they all agreed that all relations between him and his family would be to be broken, and that he would live with the woman Shizuko, as man and wife. I don't think they're actually married, but I think that that was what the agreement was. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then so yeah, he started making a lot of fucking money. From not a lot of money, but like a decent living off of his cartoons. Uh Oh, and then this was like when he was like talking about like the comic that he made. This was like one instance where I actually felt bad for him. He said, "Sometimes when I was drawing the adventures of Kinta and Ota, the monthly comic strip for Shizuko's magazine, I would suddenly think of home, and this made me feel so miserable that my pen would stop moving, and I looked down through brimming tears. And I was like, damn. I was like, damn. The only time I felt bad for him, because that I can." The man was feeling reminiscent, and he was missing home, and I felt bad for him because I was like, damn, because he's roping me, he's getting me. After the man killed himself, I was like, but rest assured, I did not fall for his trickery. Okay, okay, and then so, and then so like one day he was like talking to this little girl, and this little girl said, "Dad." Oh, and by this time, this little girl was calling him daddy because he was living there for a decent amount of time. Well, anyways, so the girl, she said, "Daddy's it true that God will grant you anything and will anything if you pray for it?" And then he was kind of like, "Yes, I'm sure he'll grant Shigigo, the little girl, anything she wants, but I don't suppose Daddy has a chance." And I wonder why, because I said, because Daddy's going to hell. I don't want him to go to hell, but he's going to hell for the things that he's done to all these women, okay? Like, the way that he uses these women, like, later on, like, it's crazy to me. Like, even the first one, he says that he loves his women, but I genuinely don't think that he actually loved that woman that killed herself with him. I genuinely don't. And I can't explain why. I just don't feel it in my heart of hearts that he cared for that woman more than... Because I feel like he just saw her as, like, an object, like an embodiment of how he felt. And so her dying was like a symbolism of like him dying, but like I don't know, I don't know how to explain it, but like for me, it just feels like to him she was not like a person, she was just like an embodiment of like emotions, if that makes sense. I don't know, but anyway, so continue with this conversation, and then blah blah blah, and then so this conversation basically led to the little girl being like, "I would like my real daddy back," and I said, "Hot damn." Hot damn, she said, "I want my daddy back." And oh my god, when I tell you he got dramatic as fuck over that, he was like, "I felt dizzy with shock. An enemy. Was I Shigeko's enemy, or was she mine? Here was another frightening grown-up who would intimidate me. A stranger, an incomprehensible stranger, a stranger full of secrets." Shigeko's face suddenly began to look that way. All because a little girl, God forbid, missed her real dad and was like, "I actually want my real daddy back." He was like shook to the core. He was like, "I cannot believe that she would betray me in such a manner, to wish that her real dad, who gave his sperm to make her, I can't believe that she would want him back. Like, that is inconceivable to me." And I was just like, okay, whatever, man. Oh my gosh. And then he goes on to say, I knew from then on I would have to be timid even before that little girl. All because she said she wanted her daddy back. Oh, I guess this makes sense. And then so wait, so before he asked that, right? So before she said I would like my daddy back. He said I casually changed the subject. She could go, what do you want from God? And he's like, I want my real daddy back. I guess that could hurt somebody, but not to this degree where you have to feel like insecure around a child. You just be like, you just kind of take that on the chin and be like, okay, like I guess like you want your real dad back, but like he's not coming back, and I'm here, and I guess I'm your dad now. But instead, he took that to heart and was like, "Oh my god, like she fucking hates me. She hates me. She hates me." And that's kind of the issue with this main character. Like everything that people do, he just assumes the worst out of people and just like, "Oh, so you hate me? So you want me to die? You want me to kill myself?" And maybe in a way, they do. I don't know. But anyways, um, so we'll flip to the next one. So basically, this horror guy, right? He like drops by the house and he like rags on the main character, being like, "Oh, like you're getting over in your head. Like I know your comments are getting like super fucking popular, or whatever the fuck, but like your composition is still not worth a damn. So don't get overconfident, okay? Okay." And then instead of kicking the fucking horror guy out of the fucking house and being like, "What the fuck are you coming to my house and talking shit about me in front of my face, bitch?" Instead, the main character was like, "Don't say such things. You'll make me cry." Yeah. Oh my god. Oh my god. And then after all that, he like starts spiraling. Okay? He like starts spiraling. He's like I can't believe he would like come down here and say all of that, like this and that. And then even then and then so Hori, the guy was even like, "Oh, you must stop your fooling around with women. You've gone far enough. Society won't stand for that anymore." And then this is when I was like, "What the fuck?" I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" Okay, but anyways, yeah. So after that like small conversation he had with Hori, he was like, from then on, however, I came to hold almost a philosophical conviction, the belief, what is society but an individual? And from that, he just started like spiraling. So he like starts like going out and drinking it, but before then he was already doing that. But I think it gets like worse around this time. And then uh yeah, he was like starting to draw like all like emo and stuff, but he was already doing that, so I don't know what the fucking deal was. I don't know why he's pointing that out now, but we already knew he was doing this emo shit. So, anyways, one day he came home drunk, and this is when I was like, "Yo, like that's fucked up to say, low key, like not low key, like it's actually fucked up." So basically, he said to the woman that he was living with, Shizuko, whatever. He laid down his ass and he said, "The more I look at you, the funnier your face seems. Do you know I get inspiration from my cartoons from looking at your face when you're asleep?" He said that to the woman that literally like picked him off of the fucking streets and let him live in her fucking home and gave him like this opportunity to make money and all of that. He said that to her fucking face when he was drunk one day. And I said, "Bro, what the fuck? What the fuck?" Like, what the fuck, bro? Like, holy shit. I was gooped, bro. I was gooped and I was gagged. Oh my god. And then so the lady, she said, "What about your face when you sleep? You look like an old man, a man of 40." And I was like, "Okay, LOL, she got him there." And then he said, the audacity of it all, right? The audacity of it all. He said, "It's all your fault. You've drained me dry. Man's life is like a flowing river. What is there to fret over? On the bank, oh, on the river bank, on the willow tree." And I think he like starts to sing or whatever the fuck. And so the wife, she was like, "Bro, like shut the fuck up and stop making a racket and get your ass like in bed, like ASAP." And then he was like, "She did not take me seriously." Well, did you want her to take you seriously after what you said to her, saying that her face is like so stupid? Bro, wicked, wicked work, if you ask me. Very wicked work. So much so that you're green to me, Alpha Ball. Yeah, and so basically he started drinking more liquor. After all that, I don't know why he's crashing out, because he's just crashing about like society, I guess, like Joker style. He's crashing about society. And so, quote, he says, "Sometimes I spent the night out. At bars, I acted the part of a ruffian, kissed women indiscriminately, did anything as long as it was not in accordance to accepted usage, drank as wildly, no much more, whatever the fuck. And as before, oh my god, I can't read for shit. His words, oh my god. As before, my attempted suicide was so hard pressed for money that I used to pawn Shizuko's clothes." And I said, "Yo, what to him kissing other women, and yo, that's fucked up, to selling his girls clothes for liquor, for money for liquor. I was like, what the fuck? Oh my days. And so one day he like comes home from like binge drinking, and after he like sold all these girls' clothes, and so he overhears a conversation with the mom and her kid. And so the kid was like, "Why does he drink?" And the mom was like, "It's not because he likes liquor. It's because he's too good." Because and then she trails off, and then the little girl is like, "Do all good people drink?" And then the mom was like, "Not necessarily, but." And then the little girl was like, "I'm sure Daddy will be surprised." Because apparently they like bought like a pet bunny or something. Um, and so the main character, like in parentheses, like I feel like in retrospect, it said that like they were happy, the two of them. I've been a fool to come between them. I might destroy them both if I were not careful. A humble happiness, a good mother and child. God, I thought, if you listen to the prayers of people like myself, grant me happiness once. Only once in my whole lifetime will be enough. Hear my prayer. Yeah, so I was just like, bro resorted to praying because he knew he fucked up his family so bad. He like started to pray to God to fix it. That's how I took it, because I was like, bro, like this is all you. Like you did this. Yeah, you did this. Like I know you're just like depressed and stuff, but like at the same time you could be like, bro, like I'm fucked up in the head right now. I'm not in this space to be taking care of you and your kid or whatever, but like goddamn. God damn. He said, I felt like getting down on my knees to pray then and there. I shut the door softly, went to the Ginza, and did not return to the apartment. So basically, that was that. That was that with the mom and the kid. He was like, oh, damn. Like, I fucked up this family bad. And so, yeah, because at that point, if you were selling your wife's clothes for alcohol, like, you really fucked them over bad. Like, shit. And then so the very next paragraph after that, he said, my next spell was, as a kept man was an apartment over a bar by the Kyobashi station. And then he goes on about society over again. Like, I don't know. Yeah, so basically, okay, so he runs away and he meets this woman, another woman that takes him under his fucking wing in the Kyobashi station or whatever the fuck, okay? And then so he just goes on this rant about like how society, and how society is made up of individuals, who would have guessed, and that's basically it for like these next couple of pages. Like he just goes on and on and on about that. And you guys can obviously read if you want to, but I don't really have much to say beyond, yes, society is made up of people. Period, right? Period. And so yeah, at this time he's literally like spiraling. I don't know why he's spiraling after, I guess Hori just really got in his head about society or whatever the fuck, okay? And so yep, and so he says at the end of like this whole spiel was like, my only actual pleasure was to engage in meaningless chatter with customers and to drink their liquor. And that was that. And then now we're going into him um getting involved with a 17-year-old. And this is where I need to put up that warning of like being of like sexual assault, because it's not going to happen right now, but it's going to happen eventually, because this is when shit hits the fucking fan. And this is when I felt really bad for dogging on him, even though it didn't technically happen to him. It's just like I felt bad for taking the piss out of this whole book, when I should have just been taking the piss out of him. But at the same time, I probably shouldn't have been taking the piss out of him, because he went through his own like struggles. So that's that's my bad. That's why I'm taking a more kind of serious tone with this, but I'm so goofing, as you can tell. So anyways, he said there was okay, so there was at this point in my life a maiden who pleaded with me to give up drink. And so the woman says, you can't go on drinking every day from morning to night that way. And he said she was a girl of 17 or so who worked at a little tobacco shop like across from the bar. And her name was Yoshiko. And I said, row to the 17-year-old. I feel like he should have just said like 18 just to placate me, but 17, oh my god. But I guess times were different back then. What do I know, right? So yeah, whenever he would go to buy cigarettes, he would just constantly be like, oh, you shouldn't be drinking, this and that. And then so he like is like, what's the point? Like, what's so bad about whatever the fuck? He goes into the spiel. And then she's like, no, I don't. And then he said, what a stupid little girl you are. I'm gonna kiss you. And she said, "Go ahead." She powdered out her lower lip, not in the least abashed. And then he said, "You silly fool, you and your ideas of chastity." And then he said, and this is just him like just spieling. He said there was something unmistakable in Yoshiko's expression, which marked her as a virgin who had never been defiled. Cause that's where I'm at right now. You see that expression? That's me right now, bro. Because I am gooped, I am gagged. Like he, that's all you took from this? Oh my gosh. So, anyways, after that interaction, he like falls into a manhole. He falls into a manhole, and the girl comes and helps him. And then she said again, like, "You drink too much." And then he said, he in the spiel, he said, "The thought of dying has never bothered me, but getting hurt, losing blood, becoming crippled, and like no things." And the likes, no things. And so he was okay with dying. It was fast and quick. But if he were to like suffer before he died, that's when he drew the line. I mean, but that makes sense for most of us, right? You don't want to suffer when you die. You want to like die quick. I would hope. That's why you euthanize like animals so they don't suffer. But yeah. Anyways, so after that incident, he was like, "I'm giving it up. From tomorrow on, I will touch drop." And all I had to say to that was, "Okay." And then the girl said, "Do you mean it?" And he's like, "There's no doubt about it. I'll give it up. If I give it up, will you marry me, Yoshiko?" And he said at the time that he meant it as a joke. But as the story continues, persists, his clownery was not taken in jest. Yeah. Yep. And so basically the next day, as might have been expected, I spent drinking, and I was like shaking my head. That's all I had to say to that. And then so he goes to the girl and was like, "Girl, I'm sorry, I got drunk." And she was like, "Oh, you're awful, trying to fool me by pretending to be drunk." I was startled. I suddenly felt quite sober. And I don't know why I wrote this. I was like, "Got your ass." I don't know why I wrote that, but I did. And then she's like, and then he was like, "No, it's the truth. I really haven't been drinking. I'm not pretending." And she said, "Don't tease me. You're mean." She suspected nothing, he said. Uh, this interaction pisses me off. But anyways, I should think that you could just. I should think you could tell just by looking at me. I've been drinking today since noon. Forgive me. And the girl said, "You're a good actor." And then he said, "I'm not acting, you little idiot. I'm going to kiss you." Was this the Riz back then? Like, was this like genuinely the Riz that women liked back then? Because I cannot imagine for the life of me like falling for a guy that calls me a fucking little idiot. And so I wrote, well, okay, I'll give this to her, right? She is a teenager, so she might think that this older man is just teasing her and just taking a jest because I was a teenager once and I used to think that older men were just fucking around with me. But the more you get older, the more you realize that like the things that these men say to you are not just jokes. Okay, they're just testing your limits to see if you're like victim worthy. So that's why they say all these like really rude and abashed things to you. They're saying it to see like what your fucking threshold is, and then once they gauge what your threshold is, they'll either stay or leave. And so I think this is what Yozo was doing to this girl. I'm gooped. Okay, I'm gooped. And then so the girl said yet again, "Go ahead." And he said, "No, I'm not qualified. I'm afraid I'll have to give up the idea of marrying you. Look at my face. Red, isn't it? I've been drinking." And then she said, It's just the sunset shining on you. Don't try to fool me. You promised yesterday you wouldn't drink. You wouldn't break the promise, would you? We hooked fingers. Don't tell me you've been drinking. It's a lie. I know it is." And this is what I mean by like teenage girls. Teenage girls, they just don't take things seriously, and that's not to fault her by any means. But at the same time, it's like, just let me keep reading, okay? Just read this. What a holy thing. un I can't read from here. What a holy thing uncorrupted virginity is, I thought. I hate it when they have these breaks because my fucking brain just doesn't work like that. And then I had never slept with a virgin, a girl younger than myself. I married her. I wanted once in my lifetime to know that the great savage joy, no matter how immense the suffering that might ensue. I had always imagined the beauty of virginity was nothing more than the sweet sentimental illusion of stupid poets, but it is really alive and present in the world. We would get married. In the spring, we'd go together on bicycles to see waterfalls framed in green leaves. I made up my mind on the spot. It was then and there a decision, and I did not hesitate to steal the flower. Not long afterwards, we were married. And all I had to say was, what is there to say? So I'm assuming about this time she probably is 18, but like it doesn't matter. It truly doesn't matter to me what her age is because she's still like far too young for him because I believe that he's like in his like mid 20s around this point, which is not pleasant. Not pleasant in the slightest. Spiel about how the world, he said like the world after all was still a place of bottomless horror. It was by no means a place of childlike simplicity where everything could be settled by a single then and there decision. And I was like, gee whiz, I wonder why marrying a virgin didn't change your life for the better. And I feel like I was foreshadowing because I didn't know what the fuck was going on at this point, but like you'll understand. So anyways, Hori, the man that you are. The man that you are, and I mean that derogatorily. So basically, the main character is like, despite not liking this dude, me and him continue to hang out. So him and his homeboy continue to hit the streets, like the hoes that they are. Um. Oh wait, actually no, not yet. So basically, the hoary guy, he like backs off for a little while. So while him and this girl, what's her name, Yoshiko, yeah. So when him and Yoshiko are married, I think from what it sounds like, I feel like they had a pretty good life. Yeah, he said he gave up drink and devoted his energies to drawing cartoons, and they would go on like dates together after dinner, and then I don't know what it is, but like he mentions milk a lot in this book, and I don't know if it's like cow's milk or like milkshakes or something, but like he says like the milk bar. And I'm like, what the fuck is a milk bar? Like, I know what it is like nowadays. It's like a cookie brand. But like, what is a milk bar? Well, like a place that sells milk? Huh. Well, anyway, so like he says that like he was having a really good time around this time. Like his little bride, like he calls her, like his little bride, was bringing him a lot of happiness from what it seems. And so, yeah. And then then he goes into saying that like the second the hoary guy showed up, his life went to shit. That's basically what he said. You can read it here if you want, but I'm not gonna read it word for word because I'm kind of tired of reading the text for now. But so yeah, he said after this guy showed up, everything went to shit. So basically, the guy showed up. He's like, "Hey, what's going on? What's going on with you? Like, I heard that you got like a girl, whatever the fuck." So yeah, so the guy he like yeah he comes in, they start talking, and then he's like, "Oh, like this is kind of a sensitive topic. Should I be saying it in front of your wife?" And so the main character was like, "It doesn't matter. You can say anything in front of her." And then he goes into saying, as a matter of fact, Yoshiko was what I should like to call a genius at trusting people. Remember that. She suspected nothing, blah blah blah. Oh yeah, so basically the hoary guy just like drops by to just tell him about like the girl that he had before this girl, and just said, "Well, anyways, it's not nothing important. She just asked me to come tell you to visit her every once in a while." And then Yozo, the guy that just dipped out of this mother and kid's wife, kid's life, the mother and the kid's life, he just like was like, "Oh shit." And then that brings back all the bad memories or whatever the fuck. So instead, he was just like, about, okay, how about a drink? After he like finally stopped drinking for once. And of course, the hoary guy got to drinking. They got to drinking. And they had this whole conversation. No, wait, not yet. So yeah, basically that's just like reintroducing Hori into like the fucking place or whatever. But anyways, one day, um, one day, they're just hanging out at his crib. They're hanging out at his crib. They're like hanging up on the rooftop of Yozo's building, and they just got to talking, and they like to play this like game that he calls we began a guessing game of tragic and comic nouns. This game, which I had invented, was based on the proposition that just as nouns could be divided into masculine, feminine, and neuter, okay, so there was a distinction between tragic and comic nouns. Yeah, and so basically, I think like tragic means like sad, and comic means funny, I guess. So, anyways, that was just what they were doing on the fucking rooftop, and so they were talking about like, are you ready? So the main character was like, are you ready? What's tobacco? And Horiki was like, oh, like tragic. What about medicine? And then blah blah blah. They were talking about like what could be more tragic than a needle, whatever. That's foreshadowing for when he gets addicted to a substance. And then so they just got to talking, and then they were like, so. No, that's not. I don't know how to describe this. This is funny to me. They were just like ripping at each other basically. So they spent like this entire like. I feel like this conversation was like actually kind of enjoyable to read because it was just like dudes just like digging around, just like having fun with like words. Because like what else would dudes do on a fucking? I'm guessing this is like a Tuesday afternoon for them. But yeah, so I guess it was like it was kind of fun. Like it was like funny, but at the same time, it did last for long. So, anyways, okay. So basically, they play the game for a little while. They're talking about like Okay, so they play the game for a little while, and they're like talking about like what the word for what crime would be considered as, and they're like going back and forth about it. And then so, but like the Hori guy, he was getting hungry. Okay, he was like, bro, like I'm getting hungry. He's like, I don't give a fuck about what crime is considered. And so he said, he's like, yeah, I'm hungry. And then so he was like, oh, my wife is making beans, and the man was like, thanks, I like beans. And I was like, LOL, the man likes beans. I don't know why that was funny to me. I don't know if beans, what kind of beans they're talking about, but like they're beans, okay? And then so, but like the Yozo guy, he was like, I don't know why like you're so flippant about this. So he said, you don't really seem very interested in crime. And so the Hori guy was like, that's right. I'm not a criminal like you. I may indulge myself with a little dissipation, but I don't cause women to die, and I don't lift money from them either. And I was like, ooh. I was like, read that motherfucker the felt. Well, anyways, and so they just got to talking about that whatever the fuck, and then he was like, so the Hori guy was like, bro, like I don't give a fuck about this conversation, bro. Like I'm getting hungies, okay? I'm really really hungies. And then so uh he was like, rice, like give me some rice. I'm hungry. Bring me something to eat. And then the main character was like, why don't you go get it yourself? And then this is where the trigger warning comes up. Okay, so I'm gonna drop the act for a little bit and be serious. Okay, so he says, why don't you go get it yourself? The main character said that. And then so yeah, so like the Hori guy said, all right, I'll go downstairs. Then Yoshiko and I will commit a crime together. Personal demonstration is better than empty debates. The antonym of crime is rice. No, it's beans. And the thing said he was so drunk that he could barely articulate his words. And then right after that, Yozo said, for once, he like stood up for himself. He said, do as you please, only get the hell out of here. Yeah. So let's yeah. And then so he like stays up there, and then he like thinks about like this whole conversation, because he's mad about the fact that Hori was not taking this like conversation about crime literally. And so he's at this point feeling betrayed, angry, and he's just like really ruminating in his mind. And then so Hori comes back up and he's like, extraordinary beans you've got here. Come, have a look. And it said that Hori's voice and color had changed. Okay. And then this is where we're getting into it. Okay. Then so the main character was like, "What is it?" And then he said, "A strange excitement ran through me. The two of us went down from the roof to the second floor, and we're halfway down to my room. And on the ground floor, where Horiki stopped me and whispered, 'Look,' he pointed. A small window opened over my room, through which I saw the interior. The light was lit, and two animals were visible. My eyes swam, but I murmured to myself through violent breathing, This is just another aspect of this is just another aspect of the behavior of human beings. There is nothing to be surprised at.' I stood petrified on the staircase, not even thinking to help Yoshiko." And so this is what he was referring to when he said that he was not able to stop the assault on his wife. And I'll keep on reading, and then I'll get to my analysis afterwards. Where is it? Horiki nosily cleared his throat. I ran back up to the roof to escape and collapsed there. Yeah. So, yeah, after seeing that, he like ran upstairs and he was just like feeling all these emotions. He just was just all over the place, basically. And he said he lost all confidence in himself, doubted all men immeasurably, and abandoned all hopes for the things of this world, all joy, all sympathy, eternally. And yeah, and then so the Horiki guy, he came up and he said, "I sympathize, but I hope it's taught you a lesson. I won't be coming back. This place is a perfect hell. But you should forgive Yoshiko. After all, you're not much of a prize yourself. So long." And then it was said that Horiki was not stupid enough to linger in an embarrassing situation. And at this point, I did not realize how grave the situation was, so my stupid ass wrote LOL to that, because I thought this was a goof. I thought they were goofing, okay? Because I thought that it was like her like cheating on him. So I was like, oh wait, that's kind of like over dramatic for someone who's like cheating on them. But like, okay. And then after that, he said, "I got up and poured myself a glass of gin. I wept bitterly, crying out loud. I could have wept on and on intermittently." And I wrote, "Regrettably, bitch." And then without realizing it, Yoshiko was standing haplessly behind me, bearing a platter with a mountain of beans on it. And then she said, "He told me he wouldn't do anything." And then he said, "It's all right. Don't say anything. You didn't know enough to distress others. Sit down. Let's eat the beans." We sat down side by side and ate the beans. Is truthfulness a sin, I wonder? The man was an illiterate shopkeeper, an undersized runt of about 30, who used to ask me to draw cartoons for him, and then would make a great ado over the trifling sums of money in which she paid for them. The shopkeeper, not surprisingly, did not come back. I felt less hatred for him than I did for Haru. Okay, so let's unpack that. We're assuming that, because I'm choosing to interpret this as she got assaulted, like she like welcomed the shopkeeper into her home, and he sexually assaulted her. And so Horiki, witnessing the scene when he was coming down for the food, instead of stopping the scene, he went up to go get Yozo to bring him down to show him that this scene was happening. And I'm supposing that back in this time, this was seen as infidelity rather than what it is, which is a crime of the utmost importance. And that's why I think I was taking it lightly, because the way it was portrayed to me initially was that she was cheating on him. But now that I'm reading it back, I'm starting to believe that like the popular interpretation of her being sexually assaulted was in fact correct, because I don't know, the way she just said it, just like the way she said he promised he wouldn't do anything is so like indicative of like what a lot of like like sexual assault victims usually say, like, oh, like he promised he wouldn't do anything, but like you just can't trust others. And that's why he was like, you didn't know enough to distrust others. And that's why I was like, remember that like part about like how she is such a good judge of character, because I think that in his mind, that since she was able to trust him, in his mind he was like, oh, like maybe she's like a good judge of character, but like deep down she's just a kid, you know, like she's just a kid and she doesn't know any better. And that's why he like didn't put much onus onto her, I think. But at the same time, I'm not really sure of his intentions. um but yeah. um and I'll keep on reading why the Yozo did not feel as much hatred for the man that actually like raped his wife over the friend that like brought him to the scene. So he said, why, when he first discovered them together, had he not cleared his throat then, instead of returning to the roof to inform me? And I was like, yeah, that was a shitty thing to do. Even then, I was like, yeah, that was a shitty thing to do. Um, on nights when I could not sleep, hatred, loathing for him gathered inside of me until I groaned under the pressure, and my dumbass mind was not taking this seriously, and I was like, oh, he was jorking it. This is why you gotta read books. Like, read books like this with like seriously, because oh my god, I was not taking it seriously at all. And then he went on to say, I neither forgave nor refused to forgive her. Yoshiko was a genius at trusting people. She didn't know how to suspect anyone, but the misery it caused. God, I ask you, is trustfulness a sin? It was less the fact of Yoshiko's defilement than the defilement of her trust in people, which became so persistent in my source of grief as to almost render my life insupportable. For someone like myself, in whom the ability to trust others is so cracked and broken that I am wretchedly timid and forever trying to read the expression of people's faces, Yoshiko's immaculate trustfulness seemed clean and pure, like a waterfall among green leaves. One night sufficed to turn the waters of this pure cascade yellow and muddy. Yoshiko began from that night to fret over my every smile or frown. And that is understandable, because I feel like in this time, women take on a lot of responsibility for what happened to them. And it's unfortunate that they do, but I think that she just felt bad, because in her mind, she probably didn't take this as like a sexual assault. She took it as her cheating on her husband. And I think that is obviously not the right way to go about it, because obviously that's not her fault for what happened to her. But at the same time, I just don't know what to say other than those were the times, you know. And then so at this point, I was like, I started to like think about like what kind of assault was it, because I was like, is this as serious as I thought it was? Because like the way he's treating it makes it sound like really grave. But I read interpretations about it online where before all of this, right, I considered him to be a very like dramatic, like a very very dramatic like narrator. And so that's why I didn't take him seriously at first, because of the way that he would just dramatize everything to the point of like just absurdity. And so that's what I was assuming he was doing here. And so that's why I was like making light of it. But then now that I'm reading it back, I'm like, this man was not fucking around. Like, I think like genuinely something traumatic happened to his wife, and it wasn't just a case of infidelity. And that's why I'm like reading this back, and I'm like, what the fuck, yo? And but I can also understand why people are like choosing to believe that he is exaggerating this, because there's some people online that are saying that like, oh, like it was probably like his wife was just cheating on him, but in his mind he believed that his wife was defiled because he doesn't want to see it any other way. And then there's another thing where people are choosing to take his text like a little bit more literally, where they're believing that she was genuinely like actually experiencing like a sexual assault. And that's where I choose to stand, because I don't really know enough about this topic to really kind of go into it and like realize that like to understand the intricate nature of the matter, you know. And so yeah. um yeah, so he said he looked up like various novels in which married women were violated, and he tried to read them. Yeah, he said, I tried reading them, but I could not find a single instance of a woman violated and so lamentable, oh my god, I can't say that, a manner as Yoshiko. Her story obviously could never be made into a novel. And that's when I like started to realize how like grave this is, because the way that he was like treating this, I'm like, is this an instance where he's not being dramatic? And so I like really kind of slowed down at this point, and I was like, by this point, I would like, this is when I like started taking this story seriously, like this point. And the rest of this, I was goofing off. I was goofing off and I was like taking it super lightly, but like this is where I like started realizing the gravity of the situation. And like the thing was that it didn't even happen to him. Like it didn't even happen to him. I felt bad for the woman. Like I felt bad for Yoshiko, but I did not feel bad for the man. But like the fact that he's like making this all about him, I was like, because like he goes into saying this, right? Um, Mm, I might actually felt better if anything. The least resembling love existed between that runt of a shopkeeper and Yoshiko, but one summer night Yoshiko was trusting, and that was all there was to it. So he's not blaming her, which is good, right? He's not blaming her. And then he said, and on account of that incident, I was cleft between the eyebrows. My voice became hoarse. My hair turned gray prematurely, and Yoshiko was condemned to a life of anxiety. And I think that's like very empathetic of him. Um, and he said in most of the novels I read, emphasis was placed on whether or not the husband forgave the wife's act. It seemed to me, however, that any husband who still retains the right to forgive or not to forgive is a lucky man. And if he thinks that he can't possibly forgive his wife, he ought, instead of making such a great fuss, to get divorced as quickly as possible and find a new wife. If he can't do that, he should forgive and show forbearance. In either case, the matter can be completely settled in whichever way the husband feelings dictate. In other words, even though such an incident certainly comes as a great shock to the husband, it is a shock and not and an endless series of ways which lash back him over and over again. It seemed to me a problem which can only be disposed of a wrath of a husband with authority. But in our case, the husband was without authority, and when I thought things over, I came to feel that everything was my fault. Far from being enraged, I not uttered a word of complaint. It was on account of the rare virtue she possessed that my wife was violated, a virtue I had prized, the unbearing, pitiful one called immaculate trustfulness. Is immaculate trustfulness a sin? And so yeah, he took this on like super hard, and I think I'll walk back the thing about like him making it about himself, but at the same time he did. But I think that like witnessing that would also traumatize him, because I feel like it did definitely bring back memories of him as a child, like also being violated in that manner. And so I think looking back on it now and putting it into perspective, I can see why he like took that on so personally and took that on like so hard, because of course you would, like if you ever see your wife get into like an incident like that, of course you would take that on like super hard on yourself, because as a husband you should be able to defend yourself and your wife in those instances. But since he was not, he took it on super hard. And that's when he started saying like he started to drink so much that his teeth fell out, and then he like his cartoons became pornographic, and he started and he started like noticing all these like things about his wife where she would like avert her gaze, and that's because she feels guilty about the whole incident, you know. And yeah, she said that it was unlikely, wasn't it, that a woman with absolutely no defenses should have yielded only that once with the shopkeeper. And then he said, had she had she ever also been with Horiki, or someone I didn't even know? I hadn't the courage to question her. Writhing in my usual doubts and fears, I drank gin. And so that's where I like walk back that thing where I'm like, oh yeah, he's a pretty cool guy. Not cool guy. He's the like respectable husband, or like a husband, for being able to like empathize with his wife that this is a traumatic event for her and that it wasn't her fault. But then he goes into saying that, oh, but like if she was able to like sleep with his shopkeeper, did she sleep with my best friend, or like did she sleep with anybody else? And that's where I'm like, so did she cheat on him, or did she get sexually assaulted? Either way, you know, like it's a bad situation for everyone involved because it's obvious that the wife is feeling super guilty about this to the point where later on the marriage literally becomes like demolished because of this one event. And so he wasn't being fictitious about that. He wasn't being uh what's the word? I don't even know, like dramatic about that, because I genuinely feel like this situation is like warranted all this like flourishing like language, like so much so I don't even have the words to say about it. Like, yeah. Uh, yeah. So around this time after that, he came home one day like super fucking drunk, and he was like he was looking for some sugar to make a sugary drink, and he was looking inside a like a pot or like a container, and he found this container called dial, and it's sleeping pills basically. And without thinking of it, he just popped open the tab and just took all of it. Yeah. And he said for 3 days and nights, I lay as dead. And when he came to, Flatfish was sitting on his pillow, and Flatfish said, "The last time was also at the end of the year, wasn't it? He always chooses the end of the year, just when everybody is frantically busy. He'll prove the death of me if he keeps on doing such things." And I honestly just feel so bad for Flatfish at this point, because I mean I feel bad for everyone involved at this point, because I'm just like it's just a really bad situation for everyone involved. I just don't know what to say, because like I said, the rest of this is just, there's nothing to really laugh about. Like, honest to God, there's really nothing to laugh about. Yeah, and then so when he woke up, he like burst into tears, and he said, "Take me away from Yoshiko." And he said the words came as a surprise even to myself. And I was like, bruh. Like, bruh. Like, she's going through it too. And then I just wish there was more emphasis based like on like what she was going through. Like, obviously he like points out things where like she's like acting like she's like stepping on eggshells around him. Like she doesn't like talk to him as she normally would. Like, she treats him with a lot more like delicacy, almost. Like, she doesn't like look in his eyes, and she's like super careful, and she's like super like anxious around him. And I feel like that's definitely like a manifest of like either she actually genuinely got assaulted, or she is cheating on him, which is like, and she got caught, and so she feels guilty. But like either way, it's just a bad situation, you know? Like, one's worse than the other, but like, yeah. um and then so at one point he said, "I'm gonna go somewhere where there aren't any women," because I'll be honest with you, I don't think women are like his issue. I think that his issue is him. You know, like him and his vices, and like his addictions, and like his like perpetual emptiness. I think that women are similar to alcohol in that they're both bad for him, and that they exacerbate like the his like downward trajectory. But I don't think that they are, the root cause of all of his issues. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but like for me personally, I truly believe that women and alcohol are like his vices, and that it's like the only like he's using it to like make his life worse. But like, yeah, that's how I feel about that matter. um And then so from that, Flatfish said, "Excellent idea. You really ought to go to a place where without any women. Um, Everything goes wrong as soon as women are around you. Yes, a place without women is a fine suggestion." Um, so yeah, and then after that, it reads, "Yoshiko seems to have got the idea that I had swallowed the overdose of sleeping pills by way of atonement for her sin, and this made her all the more uncertain before me. She never smiled, and she never looked as if she could hardly be persuaded to open her mouth. Yeah, I found the apartment so oppressive that I would end by going out as usual to swill cheap liquor. Um, yeah, And then by this point, like Flatfish was like bringing him money because like this was his sexual. No, this is his second. I don't know why the word sexual came out. Oh my god. This is his second time committing suicide, and I think that Flatfish reported it back to his family. And so Flatfish started bringing money and saying that it's a little gift from me. But I think that the main character realized that it was from his brothers. Like his brothers was the one giving the money to Flatfish, and Flatfish was the one giving him the money. So yeah. So around this time, he like goes on like a little vacation to a hot spring, but even then, he wasn't really doing anything other than like staring out the window from the place he was living at. Um, and then as he was like walking home, he like suddenly vomited, and then this is the first time he actually like coughed up blood, like for real. And he was just really going through it. Like he was like coughing up blood on the streets and whatever the fuck. And so he like was on the ground for a little bit, like collecting himself, and then he went into a pharmacy where um he meets this woman and he thinks she must be unhappy too. Unhappy people are sensible to the unhappiness of others. And then he realizes that she is on crutches. Um, and I didn't really understand this. I'll read this to you guys and see if you guys like understand it too. I might have to read up on it and see what it means. He said, I suppose a desire to run up on. Oh my god. I supposed a desire to run up beside her, but I could not take my eyes away from her face. I felt tears starting and saw the tears from brimming from her eyes. So I don't know what that was all about, but yeah. And so he like goes back to the pharmacy again, and this time he was like in a better, like he like slept on it, and then it came back and was like, hey, oh hey. And then so he's like asking her for like medicine to help with his condition, his coughing up blood, and she was like, you'll have to give up drinking. And then he was like, well, he didn't say it out loud, but he's like, we're like blood relatives, which is an interesting to say about alcohol, but yes. um yeah, and then so basically he just begs her for the medication, and she like gives him like a cocktail of medications, and one of them was morphine. And she prefaced that by saying, this is the medicine to be used when you need a drink so badly you can't stand it. And yeah, she said it was no more harmful than liquor, and I believed her. For one thing, I was just at a stage where I'd come to feel the squalor of drunkenness, and I was overjoyed to have an escape after such long bondage to the devil called alcohol. And I guess that makes sense, you know, like when you're just like when your pleasure suddenly becomes your vice, you're gonna find like another pleasure to kind of get yourself out of that hole that you dug yourself with your previous pleasure, and it's just a cycle. Um, yeah, and so he said, without a flicker of hesitation, I injected the morphine into my arm. My insecurity, fretfulness, and timidity were swept away completely. I turned into an expansively optimistic and fluent talker. The injections made me forget how weak my body was, and I applied myself energetically to my cartoons. Sometimes I would burst out laughing while I was dry, and that is because morphine is morphine babes. Yeah. And then he said, I intended to take one shot a day, but it became two, then three, and when it reached four, I could no longer work unless I had my shots. Yeah. And so by this point, he got to the point where he was begging the woman to give him more morphine over and over, and he had a debt, and he like slowly accrued like a big debt to the pharmacy, because he'd be like, oh, I'll owe you. And and it got to the point where he was like, I beg you, tell them something or other. Put them off the track. I'll give you a kiss. Oh my god. And then he like goes into this whole thing, right? And this is when like you can tell that he's becoming like super dependent on this drug, because he literally like is like begging for it. He's like, that's right. I haven't touched a drop of liquor since I began with that medicine. I'm in fine physical shape thanks to you. I don't intend on going drawing stupid cartoons forever, you know. Now that I've stopped drinking and I've straightened myself out, I'm going to go study. I'm sure I can become a great painter. I'll show you. If only I can get over this critical period. So please, how about a kiss? And then apparently she burst out laughing. What a nuisance you are. You may have already become an addict for all you know. And yeah. And then apparently Yoshiko would watch him inject himself, and so she timidly asked, "Does it hurt?" And he said, "Of course it hurts, but I've got to do it, no matter how painful it is. That's the only way to increase the efficacy of my work. You've noticed how healthy I've been as of late." Then playfully, "Well, to work, to work, to work." Yeah. And then apparently one night, he was really in need. He was jonesing, right? He was jonesing, and as she came down in her crutches, he threw his arms around her and kissed her and pretended to weep. His words, not me. And she handed him a box without a word. Yeah. And by this time, he had realized that he became an in and out an in and out addict, and he became increasingly shameless. And yeah, and he said, I had also I had also what might literally be called a very ugly affair with a crippled woman from the pharmacy. Yeah. And yeah, so this is like him, like literally at his rock bottom, right? So his wife had just been assaulted, and he quit alcohol for something, personally I think, much worse, which is morphine, because morphine is not as easily as accessible as alcohol. And I don't know what the effects of morphine does to a system over the long term, but considering both of them are like depressants, or like, I think there's what they're called, like depressants, where they like slow your body down. I don't know what that does to the body. I just don't know. But it can't be any worse than alcohol, but I can't imagine it's any better. And considering he's like shooting up, like that's something different too. And so, yeah. And so around this time, he was super desperate to the point where he started writing a letter to his dad, and he confessed everything that happened to him fully and accurately. And he said, in parentheses, with the exception, of course, of my relationships with women. And so he waited day in and day out, but the answer never came. And this caused him to use the drug even more because of the feeling of rejection from his own father. And and then one day he like made up his mind to give himself 10 shots and then to throw himself into the river. Um, but as luck would have it, Flatfish appeared with Horiki, and he said, but on the afternoon on the very day I chose for the event, Flatfish appeared with Horiki in tow, seemingly have managed with his diabolical intuition to sniff up my plan. And thank God for Flatfish, right? Thank God for him. And so Horiki sat in front of him and like was actually being nice for once. It was like, I hear you've coughed up blood. And the main character said that he felt so grateful, so happy that the for that gentle smile, that he averted his face and wept. And he was like, I was completely shattered and smothered by that one gentle smile that Horiki had given him. And so he was put into a automobile with his wife and Flatfish and Horiki, and that they were going to a hospital. And then by the time they got there, in the main character's head, he said this must be a sanitarium, or sanitarium. But like it's a mental hospital basically. And as they're saying their goodbyes, right? His wife Yoshiko gives her a handbag, gives him a handbag of the hypodermic needle and the remaining medicine, aka with the rest of the morphine. And then he said, "Is it possible that she actually believed after all that this was just an energy building medicine?" And to that I say yes, because she is young and she's traumatized and she doesn't know any better, because you don't tell her any better. And so what else is she going to know? And I don't really put that on her, because yeah, but this is the good thing that he did. And he turned away the medicine and saying, "No," I said, "I won't be needing it anymore." And he said, "This is a really rare event. I don't think it is an exaggeration to say that this is the one and only time in my life that I refuse something offered to me. My unhappiness was the unhappiness of a person who could not say no." And all I had to say to that at that point was basically, yeah. And so it turns out this mental institution was the institution meant for only men. So all the staff were men, all the patients were men, and it was said that there was not a single woman. I was no longer a criminal, I was a lunatic. So he goes into saying that. Um, And then at the end of it, he says, disqualified as a human being because now he's considered as a crazy person. And I had now ceased to be utterly a human being. Um, and then so he was there for a while, and so one day his eldest brother and Flatfish came by, and his older brother had informed him that his father had died a month ago from from gastric ulcers. Um, and said, "We won't ask any questions about your past, and we'll see it too that you have no worries as far as your living expenses are concerned. You won't have to do anything. The only thing we ask of you is to leave Tokyo immediately." And that's his older brother telling Yozo's the main character that. Um, and then he added that I need not worry about my various commitments in Tokyo. Flatfish would take care of them, and I assume that would mean his wife. But after this, his wife just is nowhere to be seen. Yoshiko is nowhere to be seen. So I don't know what happened to her. And then so he said the news, and then so the main character after that says the news of my father's death eviscerated me. He was dead. That familiar, frightening presence, who had never left my heart for a split second. I felt as if the vessel of my suffering had become empty, as if nothing could interest me now. I had even lost interest in the ability to suffer, and that was when I was like, I literally felt like my heart like truly break for him because I was like that sucks, like that literally sucks so bad. And that was like through no fault of his own, like it was just his dad dying, and it like just the raw thought of that, like a boy like missing his dad, like that's sad. That's sad. Yeah. Yeah. So after that, his brother carried out his promise, and as he promised, now that he's out of Tokyo, his brother got him like a new place, and he had a little not a little, he had like a caretaker of like an elderly caretaker, and that was basically how he spent the rest of his life according to him. He said some 3 years have gone by since then. And he, according to him, says during this interval I've been several times been violated in a curious manner by the old servant. And once in a while, we quarrel like husband and wife. And I don't know what he means by violated, but I underlined it just because it was an interesting choice of word to me personally. Um, and then one day, and then he just goes into this thing about how he sent the servant to go get some pills, and turns out it was not pills, it was laxatives. So he took 10 laxatives, he woke up and he shit himself, basically. And that was like the only thing I could find humor in. So even to this day, he's still a clown. And and then so at the end of it, he says, "Now I have neither happiness nor unhappiness. Everything passes." That is a and the way I took that as like everything passes, as like everything passes as in you took the laxative and it. But yeah, so he says that is one and only thing I have been. That is the oh my god, that is the only one. Oh my god, I'm so sorry, you guys. I think I might have like some like reading something, but oh my gosh, that is the one and only thing I have thought resembled the truth in the society of human beings, where I have dwelled up as to now in a burning hell. Everything passes. And then the very, very last thing he has to say is that this year I'm 27. My hair has become much grayer. Most people would take me for over 40. And that's the end of it. And then there's an epilogue where the person who finds Yozo's like old notebooks, it kind of like goes into like how he came to get them. And there was a part in the very, very end that intrigued me to where I kind of want to read you about it. So basically, I think this main character runs into the woman that has that 5-year-old child, and this is like years later, and so she's like an older woman at this point. Yeah, and then so this was like after the war, so I think this was like written in like during like World War II, perhaps, I don't know, but so basically, the yeah, so basically the older woman said it's his father's fault. She said unconditionally. The Yozo we knew was so easygoing and amusing, and if only he had been a drunk. No, even though he did drink, he was a good boy, an angel. And that was the end of that. And And I'll admit to you guys, I read that throughout my entire. I went to a cabin yesterday, and I read the majority of that when I was at the cabin, and it was kind of a damper on my mood. I'm not gonna lie, but like I finished that in the car ride back home like earlier this morning, and after that, I like felt like empty for like 10 minutes because I was like what the fuck am I supposed to take from this? Like this book is like just so depressing. Like there's nothing to it. Like it just like I don't know what else to say about that other than yeah, like it's just a really sad book and like it's just like it just seemed it's just like taking humanity at its worst and like really turning up the volume and it just I just don't know what to say about it, you guys. I really don't. Like it's just like I like read it back now. I'll get to the point where like before the incident that happened, like before he gets like involved with his like teenage wife, I like actually genuinely like had fun reading the book because I thought the way he narrated things were like super entertaining and stuff like that. But like by the end of it, I'm just kind of like I obviously went back and like annotated some things and highlighted some things, but I can't say that I want to reread this. I'll be honest with you. I can't say that I do, but I might one day. I don't know, but I also have his book The Setting Sun or something like that and I might pick that up. But yeah. Um so who would I recommend this book to? No one. Because there's really like no point to it other than to make you sad and to think about how shitty human beings are. But I generally don't think that human beings are like inherently bad. I think that they can be bad, but I think that like humans are just born neutral. And I think that the reason why the main character just went the way he did was because he believed that humans were born like with malice in their heart and like the fact that he wasn't able to like figure out that like there was some good in the world and like that he was like proven right like constantly over and over um was just that, you know. And I feel like there could have been so many things where his life could have been better, but it's already said and done, you know. It's already said and done and there's just not much else you can really do at that point. So yeah, that is my take on the book and my voice is like going out, so I think I probably have to end this. I wish I had more to say about it, but I really don't. If you guys are interested, go ahead and read it. If you're not, then yeah. That's all I have to say about the matter. So I hope you guys found this interesting to listen to, and if it was, then yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I'm just kind of out of it because it's a really depressing read, and I was not expecting that to be the ending, but maybe I should have. Considering that a lot of people said that this book really changed your perspective on whatever the fuck, but it didn't change my perspective, other than just like making me like sad, and that's about it. But yeah, so I will leave you guys with that, and I will catch you guys in another video. All right, kisses.